The hospital board fired her at 9 a.m. By 9:03, she was escorted out by security, her badge confiscated, her career in ruins. The reason? She'd saved a Navy SEAL's life by extracting 40 bullets from his body without authorization. But what they didn't know was that 24 hours later, 3 men in dress blues would walk through those same doors. And everything, every lie, every cover-up, every assumption would shatter like glass. Before we start, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. And hit subscribe, because this story is about a nurse who lost everything for doing what was right and discovered she was worth far more than they ever knew. Mercy General Hospital, Northern Virginia. Tuesday morning, 8:47 a.m. The conference room smelled like stale coffee and corporate fear. Nurse Kira Brennan sat alone at the long table, her hands folded in her lap, her scrub still wrinkled from a 16-hour shift that had ended only 3 hours ago. Across from her sat 3 people: Dr. Gerald Hoffman, Chief of Surgery, Linda Cartwright, Hospital Administrator, and Marcus Webb, Head of Legal. None of them would meet her eyes. "Miss Brennan," Cartwright began, her voice clipped, professional, cold. "We've reviewed the incident from yesterday evening, the patient in Trauma Bay 3. Kira's jaw tightened. "You mean the patient who would be dead if I hadn't acted?" "The patient," Webb interrupted, "who you treated outside the scope of your certification, who you performed surgical procedures on without physician supervision, who you—" "Saved," Kira finished. "The word you're looking for is saved." Hoffman leaned forward, his expression a mask of practiced sympathy. "Kira, we understand you thought you were helping, but you violated hospital protocol, multiple protocols. The liability exposure alone—" "Liability?" Kira's voice was soft, dangerous. "A man came through those doors with 40 bullet fragments in his body. 40. His blood pressure was 60/40. He was minutes from bleeding out. And you're worried about liability?" Cartwright slid a paper across the table. "This is your termination notice. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. You have 15 minutes to collect your personal belongings." The room went very quiet. Kira stared at the paper, at the words that ended 3 years of service. 3 years of double shifts, of saving lives, of being the nurse other nurses called when things went wrong. "Who was he?" she asked softly. "Excuse me?" "The patient. You won't tell me his name. You sealed his records within an hour of me stabilizing him. So I'll ask again. Who was he?" Webb's expression flickered, just for a second. "That's classified." Kira laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Classified? Right, because normal car accident victims always show up with military-grade ammunition lodged in their spleen." "Miss Brennan," she stood abruptly, "I don't need 15 minutes. I know exactly where the exit is." 24 hours earlier, Monday, 7:15 p.m. The trauma bay doors had exploded inward. Paramedics rushed through, their faces masks of controlled panic. Male, late 30s, multiple GSWS, BP crashing, lost pulse, twice in transport. Kira was already moving. "Get him on the table, someone page surgery now." They transferred the patient, and that's when she saw him. Not his face. That was covered in blood and bruises, but his body. The way muscle lay over bone. The scars that crisscrossed his torso like a roadmap of violence. The tattoo on his shoulder. A trident, partially obscured by gauze. Navy SEAL. And not just any SEAL. The scarring pattern. The old bullet wounds that had healed wrong. The way his hands were positioned even unconscious. Protective, ready. This was Tier 1. DevGru. The guys who didn't exist on paper. "Nurse Brennan, we need pressure on—" "I see it," she cut off the resident. Her hands were already there, applying pressure to the worst bleeder. "He's got fragmentation wounds, not through and through. The bullets are still inside." Dr. Richard Patterson burst through the doors, still tying his surgical gown. He was 53, arrogant, and had a reputation for treating nurses like furniture. "Status," he barked. "Multiple gunshot wounds," the resident stammered. "Fragments retained. Severe hemorrhaging from—" "I can see that," Patterson snapped. He glanced at Kira. "You, new girl, step back. This is a surgical case." Kira's hands didn't move. "With respect, doctor, if we wait for an OR, he'll bleed out in 6 minutes. Patterson's eyes narrowed. "I didn't ask for your opinion, nurse. I asked you to step back." "Sir." "Now." She stepped back, watched Patterson examine the wounds, with hands that were competent but slow, methodical. "By the book. Too slow." The monitor screamed, blood pressure dropping, heart rate climbing, then falling. "He's crashing!" the resident yelled. Patterson called for drugs, for equipment, for standard protocol, and Kira watched the numbers fall. 60 seconds, 90, 2 minutes. She'd seen this before in Mosul. A Marine hit by an IED, fragments everywhere. The surgeon had followed protocol. The Marine had died. She'd sworn she'd never watch it happen again. "Doctor," Kira said quietly, "the fragments are causing internal hemorrhage. We need to extract them now, here, or he dies." Patterson didn't even look at her. "I said step back, nurse." 3 minutes. The SEAL's lips were turning blue. Kira made a decision. She stepped forward, grabbed a tray of instruments, and moved to the patient's side. "What the hell are you doing?" Patterson shouted. "My job," she said flatly. "Hold pressure there. I need retraction." "You are not authorized." "Then watch him die," Kira snapped, "because that's your alternative." Her hands moved with precision that didn't come from civilian training. She located the first fragment by feel. Muscle memory from battlefield procedures she couldn't talk about. Forceps. The resident, wide-eyed, handed them over. She extracted the first bullet fragment. Then the second. The third. Patterson was yelling. Someone was calling for security. But Kira didn't hear any of it. She was in the zone, the place where nothing existed except the work in front of her. 15 minutes later, she'd removed 40 fragments, 40 pieces of metal that would have killed him within the hour. The monitor stabilized, blood pressure rising, heart rate steadying. The SEAL took a deep, shuddering breath, and Kira finally looked up into the furious face of Dr. Patterson. "You're done here," he said coldly. "Security, remove her." But before they could move, Kira looked down at the fragments she'd laid out in a surgical tray, 40 pieces of metal, and every single one was wrong. Not standard ammunition, not civilian rounds. These were custom, military grade, experimental, the kind of ammunition that didn't exist on civilian streets. "Where did he get hit?" she asked quietly. "Car accident," the resident said. "That's what the report—" "This wasn't a car accident," Kira interrupted. She picked up one of the fragments with forceps, holding it to the light. "These aren't normal bullets. Someone wanted him dead. Not just shot. Dead. Completely dead." Patterson grabbed her arm. "You're done talking security." The SEAL's hand shot out, gripping Kira's wrist. Everyone froze. His eyes opened. Barely, just slits. But there was recognition there. Focus. And something else. Fear. "Doc," he rasped, his voice barely a whisper. "Mali. Ambush. They're still hunting." Then he lost consciousness again. The room went silent. Kira pulled her arm free from Patterson's grip. "Someone want to tell me what the hell is going on?" No one answered. 2 hours later, men in dark suits had arrived. Federal agents, they said. The SEAL was transferred to a military facility. His records were sealed, and Kira was told to forget everything she'd seen. But as they walked her out, past nurses who looked away, past doctors who suddenly found their charts fascinating, Kira's mind wasn't on them. It was on a different hospital, a different country, where the walls were canvas, not drywall, where the screams were in Pashto and Arabic, not English, where she'd worn desert camo, not scrubs, where Nurse Kira Brennan had been Staff Sergeant Kira Brennan, 75th Ranger Regiment Medical Unit, attached to Joint Special Operations Command, where she'd extracted bullets by headlamp and moonlight. Where 40 fragments wouldn't have shocked her, because she'd once pulled 63 pieces of shrapnel out of a Delta operator and sent him back into the fight. But that was classified too, just like everything else about her. Now, 24 hours later, she stood in the parking lot with a cardboard box containing 3 years of her life, a coffee mug, a stethoscope, a photo of her unit from Afghanistan, the only one she'd kept. Her phone buzzed, a text from another nurse. "I'm sorry, this is bullshit. You saved him." Kira didn't respond. She just got in her car and drove. Not home. She didn't want to go home. Instead, she drove to the only place that ever made sense, the Veterans Memorial Park on the edge of town. She sat on a bench, staring at names carved in stone. Friends, brothers, sisters in arms, people who died doing what was right. "Maybe I should have let him die," she muttered to herself. "Would have been easier." "No, you shouldn't have." Kira spun around. 3 men stood behind her, all in navy dress blues, all wearing the trident. The one in the centre was older, maybe 50, with grey at his temples and eyes that had seen too much. "Staff Sergeant Brennan," he said. It wasn't a question. Kira stood slowly. "That's not my name anymore." "No," the man agreed. "Now you're Kira Brennan, civilian nurse, fired for saving the life of Petty Officer First Class James Mitchell, one of my men." He extended his hand. "Captain Richard Dalton, SEAL Team 3, and we need to talk." They sat at a picnic table. Dalton's 2 men stood at a distance. Security, Kira realized watching the perimeter. Old habits. "How is he?" Kira asked. "Alive. Because of you." Dalton pulled out a tablet showing her a medical report. "The doctors at Walter Reed said if those fragments had stayed in another hour, he'd have suffered catastrophic organ failure. You didn't just save his life. You gave him a chance to walk again." Kira studied the report. "What happened to him?" Dalton was quiet for a moment. 6 months ago, my team was in Mali tracking a terrorist cell. We got ambushed. Mitchell took the worst of it. 40 hits from weapons we've never seen before. "Someone's selling military tech to terror groups," Kira said. "Exactly," Dalton confirmed. "Mitchell was sent stateside for treatment, but we kept it quiet. Civilian hospital, fake identity, standard car accident cover story." "And I blew your cover by being good at my job," Kira finished. "No," Dalton said. "You saved one of my best men. But now we have a problem. Which is, the people who shot Mitchell, they know he survived, and they know a nurse pulled 40 bullets out of him, bullets that can be traced back to their weapons program." Dalton's expression was grim. "They'll come for you, to tie up loose ends." Kira's blood went cold. "You're telling me I have a target on my back because I saved a SEAL's life?" "I'm telling you that you're the only witness to evidence we need. Those fragments you removed, they're being analysed right now. They'll help us track down the manufacturers, stop the weapons from spreading. But until we do, I'm a liability," Kira finished. Dalton shook his head. "You're an asset, and we'd like to offer you a position." "Excuse me?" Kira blinked. Dalton slid a folder across the table. "Contract position, medical liaison for Joint Special Operations. You'd work with SEAL teams, Ranger units, Delta, anyone who needs trauma care that understands operational security." "I'm not military anymore," Kira said. "I got out for a reason." "I know," Dalton said quietly. "Mosul, 2019. You lost 3 Rangers in a convoy attack, held the line for 40 minutes until medevac arrived, saved 8 others, got a Bronze Star and a medical discharge for PTSD. Kira's hands clenched. "You read my file. I read what you did, and I'm telling you that what happened yesterday, what you did for Mitchell, that's who you are, not the nurse who got fired, not the soldier who couldn't save everyone." His voice softened. "You're the person who fights like hell for the ones who still have a chance." She looked down at the folder, at the words printed on the first page. Department of Defense, Medical Special Operations Division. What happened to Mitchell? Dalton continued. It's happening to operators all over the world. New weapons, new threats. And we need people who can handle trauma that doesn't fit the textbooks. People like you. Kira's throat tightened. I don't know if I can go back to that. You never left, Dalton said. You've been doing this work in a hospital instead of a battlefield. But yesterday proved something. When it matters, when lives are on the line, you don't hesitate. You act. One of Dalton's men approached, whispering something. Dalton nodded, then stood. Think about it, he said. Mitchell wants to meet you. He's at Walter Reed, room 437, Walter Reed Medical Center, Wednesday, 2 p.m. Kira stood outside, room 437, her heart pounding. She knocked. Come in. Mitchell sat propped up in bed, bandages across his chest, an IV in his arm, but his eyes were clear. Alert. You must be the nurse who got fired for saving my ass, he said. Kira managed a small smile. Guilty. Sit, please. She sat. For a moment, neither spoke. I remember you, Mitchell said finally. Your voice, telling me to stay with you, that I wasn't done fighting. You weren't. I am now. He gestured at the bandages. Medical retirement. They're putting me out to pasture. I'm sorry. Don't be. Mitchell's expression shifted. I get to go home to a wife who's been waiting for me to stop tempting fate. I get a second chance because you didn't give up on me. He reached for something on the bedside table, a small wooden box. This was my grandfather's, he said, opening it. Inside was a military challenge coin. He was a corpsman in Vietnam, saved a dozen Marines, never talked about it, just kept this coin to remember. He placed it in Kira's hand. He'd want you to have it, because you're what he was, what all of us hope to be. Kira stared at the coin, at the worn edges, the faded insignia. They offered me a job, she said quietly. Dalton, Special Operations Medical Support. You gonna take it? She looked at the coin in her palm, at the challenge Mitchell had just given her. Yeah, she said. I am. 6 months later. Forward. Operating base. Classified location. Kira crouched in a field hospital tent, her hand steady as she worked on a ranger who'd taken shrapnel from an IED around her, the sound of distant gunfire, the smell of smoke and sand. Stay with me, she said calmly. You're not dying today. The ranger's eyes focused on her. You're the nurse, the one who saved that SEAL. I'm the doctor who's saving you, Kira corrected. Now shut up and let me work. She extracted the fragments one by one. 23 pieces of metal that would have killed him. But not today. When she finished, when his vitals stabilized, she stepped out of the tent. Captain Dalton was waiting. Good work in there, Doc. That's what I do. She looked out at the horizon, at the sunset painting the desert gold and red. A year ago, she'd been fired for saving a life. Now, she was exactly where she was meant to be. Not hiding in a civilian hospital, not running from who she was, but fighting, every single day, for the ones who couldn't fight for themselves. She touched the challenge coin in her pocket. Mitchell's grandfather's coin. A reminder that some people don't stop serving. They just find new battles to fight. And sometimes, the people who save lives are the ones who needed saving most. If this story reminded you that doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it's always worth it, then hit that subscribe button, because there are Kira Brennans everywhere. People who get punished for being excellent, who lose everything for refusing to compromise. But they don't stay down. They get back up. They find their mission, and they keep fighting.